3, 2.
Let's go. And the beat.
Hey, you guys. Welcome back.
We doing it. We're just going to keep rolling and move right into our next breakdown for this coming up weekend. It's a pay-per-view event. It's UFC 208 in Brooklyn, New York, headlined by Jermaine Darandami versus Holly Holm. And we're just going to do the main event like we usually do.
Jermaine Darandami. Jermaine Darandami. Okay. I might call her GDR the whole rest of the time, but I just wanted to respect her enough to get her name down. Jermaine Darandami.
She also goes by the Iron Lady.
Easy.
And that's really easy and it fits her. But we're going to move from the bottom up of the main card. We'll finish with that.
In order.
Yeah, and we'll go in order and we'll just talk about the 5 fights that are on the main event, the pay-per-view. First of all, we're at 155 with Jim Miller versus Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier came into the sport a long time ago with a upset victory over, I think it was upset victory of the year versus somebody who's no longer fighting anymore. That's how big of an upset it was. But he came on the scene, been terrorizing. His last loss was to Michael Johnson, which that was a quick fight. He got caught kind of behind the ear a little bit.
And Michael Johnson wobbled Khabib right after.
Yeah,
that,
he has power.
Like...
I made money on that. I picked Michael Johnson on that. The only other person I can think off the top of my head who's finished Poirier recently is Conor McGregor, with also a shot behind the ear a bit, and then he was submitted prior to that with to the Korean Zombie, and those are pretty much his losses. He's 20-5, longtime veteran. The only guy really a longer veteran than him is Jim Miller. Jim Miller has been in it since back in the day. He was a carpenter. He was one of those original guys who was working in Jersey with his family as a carpenter. Literally has a story of shooting a nail through a piece of sheet board or something and piercing it through his hand and then having to fight 3 days later at a UFC fight and winning his fight. Yeah, with a total punctured hand and not telling anyone and just kind of grinding through it.
Tough mofo.
Exactly. He's
from Jersey. He's fighting for his neighborhood, kind of.
Yeah.
Fighting in Brooklyn's pretty close to home.
Yeah, I'd say he definitely is. Poirier's originally from Louisiana. He's since moved around and is at American Top Team. But yeah, the local is definitely going to be Jim Miller. He's since been a pro. He's no longer had to have 2 jobs and fight. He's committed more to fighting. He's on a 3-fight winning streak right now. One of those being the Joe Lozon, off the top of my head, split decision. He also beat Takanori Gomi, which isn't that big of a win. And Thiago Alves was his most recent decision, which actually I picked Alves in that fight. Miller looked great. He out-wrestled him.
They look like a couple of Max Holloways in there. That was a great fight.
It was a really, really fun fight. Jim Miller really looked good. Yeah. It's an interesting fight. I mean, the grittiness and determination of Jim Miller always keeps him in a fight. And Dustin Poirier, he has come back in many fights. He has upsets of the year because he came back and he's heavy-handed. He is heavy-handed. He has flash knockouts where dudes are out cold, he's been knocked out.
I'll just gonna say it as the fight, as we talk further about the card, because this card's getting a lot of shit because of the belt at 145 for the women. We'll get there when we get there, but I just think people need to pay attention to that there's a lot of other meat on this card. And for old time fans, Jim Miller, he's never been a flair guy, but they still know who he is. And Dustin Poirier is one of the faves. Like, he's a fan fave.
Yeah,
I think he's
agree.
Up there. So I feel like there's a lot of other good fighters on this card. On each fight, there's a famous fighter, too.
Yeah. The line on it is -400 favorite for Poirier. I think that's too much. I think that Jim Miller deserves more respect than that.
I think that's the overpick of the day.
Yeah,
of the card. I would not play Poirier on your DraftKings.
I don't think the DraftKings lines are out yet, but I'm assuming he's going to be higher with a -400
the top,
favorite.
I
Exactly.
imagine.
And I would then definitely play like an Angela Hill, Jim Miller. His gritty determination can make him go all 3 rounds, and he's skilled in all aspects, especially the ground. The ground game's where he's going to have the advantage. I just don't think he's going to get it there because Poirier is going to be able to keep it standing with good takedown defense and then he's got a really heavy left that it's gonna.
Okay, I am going with, this is my underdog probably of the night.
Yeah,
I
I would
imagine
say
that
so.
Jim Miller is going to be really cheap. I honestly, when I first made this pick on my card, I thought Dustin Poirier was one of the Pettis brothers. I don't know why. I always get them confused. So I immediately was like, oh, easy pick, Jim Miller. Which I know that's like blasphemy to old time fans to like, but Pettis just haven't looked great to me. I guess younger Pettis has looked all right. Sergio's looked pretty good recently. But even after all this, I have this rule that I think 4 months is too soon to be back in the ring after a knockout like he suffered. Like he was knocked out, and I feel like it's been a brief amount of time, and that's too close for me. And Jim Miller's last few fights, especially the Thiago Alves fight, he stood and throw, like you were just saying, he's put, maybe for the first time in his life, full effort into fighting. And I just feel like he's of a certain age that it's starting to click. Like if there's a prime to be had, it's that 31 to 33 zone for fighters where their brain and body kind of match. You know, like where they have all the
It depends
experience.
on who.
Since I've been watching, I feel like this is the best Jim Miller I've ever seen over the last,
He's
year.
looked good.
So I'm just gonna pick with the underdog here. I'm gonna go with Jim Miller decision on this.
I am actually leaning the other way and going Dustin Poirier decision. Just because, again, with all of the history that Jim Miller has, you got to give him more benefit of the doubt than minus 400 for Poirier. Poirier is coming off of a quick knockout.
Either way, you think for people though, Miller's a good DraftKings
DK,
pick.
he is going to be a good
You can fill your
DraftKings.
card with meat. He's probably not going to get knocked out by Dustin.
Yeah. And it's not the most unheard of thing for Jim Miller coming through on this fight. I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to be a fun one. I think that you made a really good point by talking about Dustin Poirier's most recent knockout, which is only 4 months ago. I feel like this is a recurring theme on this main event card pay-per-view. There's a couple other fighters that I'm like, ooh, because you recently fought, it plays a role into
I just
what I'm
think
going
if
to do.
you had heat stroke 2 weeks ago, you're more likely to get heat stroke again. It's like your body is more likely to go to emergency. Your body wants to go to emergency tactics. So if you just got knocked out 4 months ago, and I don't know what sparring you've been doing in the gym, even light sparring, getting jostled around like that, it's not the fighter and it's not the skill set. I think the wrong punch that the fighter could normally take 8 months after healing from a knockout is not the same, especially if you're cutting weight and then getting there. So anyway,
It all plays
Jim
a
Miller
role.
was playing heavy hands, so we'll move on.
Jim Miller's moved up.
We both
in
got
weight
D's,
class.
opposite fighters. Either way, we think Dustin Poirier is a bad pick on DraftKings, and Jim Miller is probably the better way to go. We agree on those.
I would agree with that 100%. So, moving on to the next fight at light heavyweight at 205, we have the veteran Glover Teixeira versus Jared Cannonier. Glover Teixeira just recently lost to
A lot
Anthony
of
Johnson.
ATT guys on this card. Have you know,
Yeah, they're right down. It's a drive up. They just got to go straight up to the coast. What is it? A 16-hour drive
Yeah,
from
something-
Florida?
something.
Like that. Yeah, they don't even have to
Probably
take
from
a plane.
Miami,
A
Coral
plane's what,
Gables.
4 hours if that?
Yeah.
So
Quick.
super quick. Teixeira is coming off of that knockout loss where he lost a tooth to Anthony Johnson in the first punch of the fight, or like the third punch of the fight, that uppercut. That was only how many months ago? 5 months ago. So again, and he was out cold. Like, he didn't get up off of the mat for a minute.
What was his fight right before the fight against?
He had won his previous fight to Rasad Evans with a TKO.
When you look at his last 3 KOs,
Yeah.
all of them are fighters that you're like,
He beat OSP, who just recently fought. He beat
which
Pat
how did
Cummings,
OSP look in his last fight?
who's been exactly. He also beat Pat Cummings, who's also been. People will say that
and
he
Rashad
has not the
Evans,
sturdiest chin.
I'm sorry.
I've made so much money betting against him.
Thank you.
Money.
I don't think I've ever bet with Rashad Evans knowing nothing.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
I had that Bader pick,
Now
and I was one of my most solid picks of the year. It was just Rashad Evans has had so much heavy duty
Yeah, so, okay, go
injuries.
on. Teixeira.
So,
I don't
Teixeira.
know enough about Teixeira, yeah. I don't know enough about Cannonier, but I like what Teixeira said about how he he didn't get his shot once too. Like no one would fight him because he wasn't famous enough. So he took the fight because of that. Like kind of giving him a.
So Cannonier, I believe, was found out of Alaska. I don't know if it was through the show. I believe it might have been through the Looking for a Fight with Dana White. I'll go back to Cannonier real quick with Teixeira. He, again, his last quick loss. Other than that, he's only lost to his other loss was a decision to Phil Davis where he got out wrestled, and then John Jones prior to that. Other than that, he's been pristine in the UFC. Mega power, good footwork. Ground game is where he's really good, but he's chosen to stand the ladder in his part of his career.
I bet that won't happen as much. After
this last knockout,
I bet that won't happen as much.
So now going to Cannonier, he's a prospect out of Alaska, which the Alaska scene is one of the weakest in the nation. It's with North Dakota and some of those promotions.
It's too cold.
There's not enough competition. He can be the champ by fighting the dude that was washing dishes and is like, oh, I guess I'm back to washing dishes.
Yeah.
Like, he's all of a sudden the champ of Alaska. And he came in and lost his first fight to Sean Jordan, which isn't an easy fight to come in, who's recently released. But either way, he lost to TKO to him, which he was doing all right.
Sean Jordan, big old heavy.
Yeah. Big old criminal Sean Jordan. He has a crazy criminal record that just came out. That UFC was suppressing. It was interesting. Yeah. Really weird article.
Why would suppress it for him?
Right.
Like,
other guys he just kicked right out. And Schwab was talking about it, actually.
He was like a guy that played high school football and then just got super out of shape but stayed in his hometown and like, I got 7 touchdowns. And
I feel like I listened to one of the TFAKs and Schwab was talking about how Jordan's brother should have been in the UFC and was this huge also like football player, but always was in trouble. And Holly Holmes was at the gym and everybody stopped to watch him come out and wrestle against Schwab because he was just coming through. And he's like, why is everyone stopping? And this dude came at him like he was in a real fight. And he was just like, I didn't realize this dude was doing coke before every sparring session every time. So he was always like a gym legend. Yeah, and that's Sean Jordan's brother.
Anyway,
Moving back to Cannonier, he then came back from that loss and beat Cyril Asker, who just recently had a win in the UFC as well, and also beat Ivan Kutalaba, which was a decision.
Yeah.
That was the dude who came in with the Hulk. Remember that he walked in all green? He had Cannonier as a Muppet or whatever behind him. You gotta win that fight. You gotta win that fight if you do that.
That was the second time he did the Green Hulk makeup.
And
he looked awesome in his first fight in the Green Hulk makeup, so everyone saw him in the Hulk makeup again, remembered who he was, so it was smart that way.
Yep.
Because it was like, oh, it's this guy, the Hulk makeup guy. Oh, I liked him. His last fight was good.
Yep.
But it's like, whoa, did he fight somebody that made him look that good?
Exactly.
Or did him and Cannonier, because Cannonier looked good, and that was a great fight.
I would say that Cannonier's biggest fault that I saw initially in his first loss was he was out of shape. He was just not in UFC level shape. It got a little bit better. The fact that he won a 3-round decisions
with that, yeah.
And he was
putting
stuff out.
Kutalaba by the end of that fight have no gas tank.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Zero. He couldn't even stand up there.
And if Glover's a wrestler.
Exactly.
I feel like yeah.
I think that
yeah, go ahead.
Cannonier has a shot because he has really good hard straight punches and he's athletic. But I think the total experience and the fact that Glover Teixeira is always a fight away from being in the next title fight contention, this is going to help him get there, even though he is 37. Like, he's at 205.
Really, Dos Anjos, would it be any different in the way you felt about my Borecast of the week, the Stipe Miocic versus Dos Anjos? Would you really feel any different about that fight if it was against Teixeira? I don't think you'd be like, okay. It'd be the exact same amount of excitement. It seems like the same level of competition for Stipe. Either way. So I feel like he's not too far away, like you're saying. He's only one fight away from in contention.
From in contention again. I do think that...
I'm talking about the right weight class, right?
Yeah, 205.
Is that Stipe?
No, he's heavyweight.
That's DC. Okay, never mind. I'm in a whole wrong weight class.
So, in this fight, I think that the potential prop bet is decision Teixeira, if not late finish. But I can also see, because of the recent out cold, he lost a tooth with that punch.
Yeah.
He was out for like 45 seconds, a minute out on the mat, which is forever. Usually it's seconds. He was out. That happened 5 months ago. He doesn't cut too much weight.
He's not a young man.
But he's not a young man. So an upset here wouldn't absolutely be the most surprising thing. And the money line is a slight favorite at 165 for Teixeira. I think that's spot on. I think that he's a slight favorite. There's ways Cannonier can get him out of there. It's all whether Teixeira comes in. If he takes him down, it's over. If Teixeira takes him down in the first minute of the fight, the fight's over.
It's like that. I would like to think here at 37, the thing that makes him different than just, Poirier is just hungry. He just doesn't play as smart of a game. You'd like to think at 37, Teixeira has to come in, realize from the last knockout, not stand and blow, that's going to be his go-to, is to get him down, and just play smart and grind it out and do a points game. You'd like to think at his age he would do that. So I think Teixeira decision, but that's not worth money on DraftKings. Mm-hmm. So do you stay away from this fight, or do you take the coin flip and just be like, the other guy could knock him out? So what's your pick?
I have Teixeira decision. That could move into a finish potentially, but I do think it should be Teixeira walking away with it.
I agree with you. And if this other guy comes out and does something, then I feel like it's star making for him.
Yeah, I think Teixeira put it the best himself by saying, "Hey, I've given a guy a shot like somebody gave me, and it's admirable. He's a lifelong martial artist." Moving on to a lifelong martial artist, we have a middleweight bout at 185 with Rolando Souza versus Tim Bosch. The nickname
Gator.
Jacare the Gator. I thought it was a Gator. I thought it was too. Jacare Souza. That's true. We do know him as
Jacare. I mean, Gator in
Brazilian. At Spanish, I don't know. It's lagarto or lagartijo would be like, it's not Jacare, but I'm sure there's a reason, Portuguese or something like that. Against the Barbarian, this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't make any sense.
Fight. It's a weird fight.
Really, really weird fight. But
very risky for Ronaldo, to me, to put himself in this position when he is one fight away from a title shot. Now he has to have 2 fights. Now he has to go through Tim Bosch and then that one more fight. He's not going to get the title shot next.
He's done this before, though, with this specific 3 fights ago.
Run up and then boom.
Well, he had just beat we're looking at his past 5 fights over 2 years, 4 months ago against Gegard Mousasi. He submitted him. That was a great fight. I really recommend just good ground game stuff. Then he fought Chris Camozzi. How does that make sense?
Yeah.
He didn't need to. He knew, and he had already beat Chris Camozzi once. This is a rematch. Why?
Chris Camozzi.
Exactly. And it was Chris Camozzi's debut. I think it was short notice. That's what happened. Souza's opponent fell out, and Chris Camozzi came in on like a week's notice, debuted, and got submitted again.
And we have alluded on the podcast previously that we think Ronaldo could be chasing a cycle. We think his picks for fights are weird.
I think that's a really good point. He does come from the part of the world that does tend to get caught for doing stuff like that. They have easier access to get it, where somewhere like here in the States, it's not only illegal, it's federally illegal. So there's over there, they're just like, oh, you want what? Okay, we don't care. You want silicone for your muscles? Okay, we don't care. So it's over there, it's candy for them. So it's just that much easier. And we've seen a definite change to people that have moved to America from that part of the world.
If I'm Souza's manager, this just isn't smart. At his age, why would you it just doesn't make sense to me.
This is stylistically one of the tougher fights that he could ever have. Is if he had a pure striker that he could get down and out grapple. The fact that the wrestling can keep it on the feet. Souza is a better striker, but the Barbarian fits his nickname perfectly. He has gone in there on fights, Yushin Okami, freaking other fights that he's just losing and comes in swinging and gets a knockout. He was on like a 3-fight skid for a while, came back and beat Josh Salmon. And that
R.I.P. Pour some beer out.
Exactly. with that, can we really take away that Bosch really deserved that? Well, he knocked out Saman, but was it the best? Because soon thereafter he passed away, and we found out that he was heavily influenced by opioids, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. Florida pill problems.
Exactly. It's really, really unfortunate, and that was 6 months ago. He then knocked out Rafael Natal, who is
notorious for the knockout.
Should not be in the UFC after that last loss, honestly. I don't think, but I think they'll probably give him another fight. Nowhere near Souza's caliber of fighter. So I see Bosch's reason to fight because he's like...
But you almost see that Bosch knows, like, okay, he has these 2 wins, but you're looking almost at his last 5 fights and being like, eh.
Well, is he really going to make a run for the 185 title?
Oh, no.
Souza has his last shot to really go for that. I mean, Bosch has been putting together he has 2 knockouts in a row against not the caliber of competition. Souza did win
I call it the Conor tape rule. I feel like Conor watches tape, and the same way John Jones was saying, like he just watches tape
studies
and
everything.
Studies people's games. I think Conor studies people's tape until he finds the hole to lay in that, uppercut.
Exploit it.
Yeah, I feel like with him, Tim Bosch, if he is on this streak, he could be doing the exact same thing. Like he knows this is his last shot. It's almost like.
Would you say that he's putting his eggs all in one basket, so he's only focusing on 2 techniques, and he's going to throw those uppercuts until they don't work anymore or get knocked out? And
I think
it's me or you.
It all matters.
It's me or you. Souza is a better striker, though. He really has evolved. I mean, he comes in with all of the jiu-jitsu credentials of the highest caliber jiu-jitsu tournaments that he's won.
Sauce is my favorite guy in the division right now, and it scares me that he took... It's just, anytime these weird fights happen where I feel very confident about who's going to win, like very easily confident,
right?
That's where it's like...
Right. He's a minus 500 favorite.
So Sal's is going to be the biggest favorite on the DraftKings, probably.
There's going to be a couple up there. There's a couple other guys that are heavily favorited as well, but I think that's too high for this as well. We saw that on the first fight with Jim Miller-Poirier. This is in the same boat. This needs to be maybe 2-1 Souza, but that's it. Not 5-1. There's no odds there. The odds are definitely in Tim Bosch's favor as far as any type of finish under for Tim Bosch or knockout. The wrestling, Tim Bosch can keep it standing with his anti-wrestling. Souza's gone back to his striking. He lost that split decision to Romero that I thought Souza won.
A lot of people did.
And then he beat Vitor Belfort, who has been off TRT and not looked like Vitor lately. I think that if Souza comes in and takes him right down, doesn't want to stand with him, it's over. First round submission. For Souza, that's my pick because that's the most educated way of going with it. But I think there is upset ability and there's value in Tim Bosch.
I'm going to do... Yeah, I think Tim Bosch is something weird. I see it when finishing in round 1 as well with ground and pound TKO.
4?
Souza.
Jacare. All right, so this is a fun fight. This is kind of what I think the pay-per-view is bringing in the star quality as far as a fighter to try to help bump the numbers because I feel like the 2 contenders for the main event... hardcores like us love them.
They were desperate for Anderson on this card.
So they got someone and they said, anyone, will you fight Anderson? Okay, Derek Brunson said, yes, I just lost to Forrest Whitaker. 2 months ago in a knockout? 2 months ago, he lost in a knockout. We're talking about guys 5 and 6 months and we're like, ooh, we don't know if they've recovered yet from that, let alone 2 months ago. And he was out. He was out. Anderson Silva, longtime veteran. If you're listening to this, I shouldn't have to explain his career. He is one of the first faces of the UFC in the...
You should know.
Exactly.
I know.
More than you. I mean, the girls at home
I just feel
know.
like if you found us to listen to Lesbo and the Bean talk about MMA...
Exactly.
You should know at least what I know.
So, he controversially lost to his last 5 fights. He hasn't won a fight since 2013 or something like that.
I've never seen him since I've been watching the UFC. I've never seen him win.
Over 4 years ago. I mean, Chris Weidman, it's been a long time.
I keep hearing about this spider everyone speaks of, but
there's flashes of it, but he's aging. He's had one of the most...
years old.
With one of the most brutal highlight injuries the sport's ever seen.
Oh my God.
One of the most. And again, if you're on this, you've seen that break. You've seen his leg break over Chris Weidman's check kick.
It looked like he hit a home run in the 1930s and his leg was a bat.
Split and it crack. Oh, to hear that in the ring, how unbelievable would that be to just be like, oh.
It was one of the, I was into UFC. I remember.
Our ladies at home were watching the fight with us. We were all together watching that, and it was just like, we all turned away just, oh my gosh.
No, I feel like, didn't we go to a bar and with Barb?
No.
I feel like I saw the Chris Weidman. No, that was the first fight I saw.
When he got knocked out.
That was the first one.
No, I think we were with the old ball and chain, both of ours, and we were all watching, and they turned away and were just like, I can't believe that just happened. And we were just like, yep, he's done. We never thought he'd fight again. He has come back and since come back and lost. So he hasn't won. He did win against Nick Diaz, a decision that was overturned due to weed. I think it was weed. Or maybe he lost that fight. I think he won that. Either way, he lost to people like Daniel Cormier, his very last, on 3 days' notice because John Jones got pulled. On 3 days' notice, he came in. That's respectable. He went to decision with somebody ready to go 5 rounds. It was a 5-round fight. It was a main event. He's a fighter's fighter. Everyone has seen the highlight reels that Anderson Silva can put together. I'd say he is the epitome of Muay Thai clinch fighting with good takedown defense. He's okay on the ground. Doesn't throw up tons of submissions, but when he does, they count. He can be wrestled, but it is hard because he's so long. He has long sprawl. And he's a counterpuncher. And the counterpuncher, to me, in this fight, is the end-all, be-all. Because, like a Holly Holmes versus Ronda Rousey, or Anderson Silva versus Damian Maia, the opponent has to be walking into his punches. Doesn't have to be, but accentuates the punches to get those knockouts that happen when they walk forward into it. As soon as Damian Maia stopped walking into Anderson Silva's punches, he couldn't finish them. And they went all 5 rounds, and it was the first time the whole sport had seen, whoa, we know how to maybe beat this guy. Don't walk forward, and he can't hit you with that counter kick, counter punch, counter this. And people have started to do that, and that's where all these losses are coming from. With Derek Brunson's last fight with Whitaker, and he does this every single fight, he'll lean forward, chin out, and throw punches hard. I've never thought it was the best decision of fighting style.
That Whitaker fight?
Yeah.
Sloppiest.
He looked like he was on roller skates.
Unreal. That was the
and no other fighter looked like that.
No, well, it made me. I did think I remember there being tons of blood in the ring. It looked like he was on a slippery mat. Like it looked like when he was standing, like they greased his feet or something. It was unreal. He could not get traction.
And he said it was slippery because I listened to. He went on his shows afterwards and said like he was just looking for the knockout because he had been getting a bunch. And I think that people aren't giving him credit. Because people are saying he doesn't have technique, he's throwing wild punches. This is a collegiate, not a national champion, but a D1 wrestler at the highest caliber, has been fighting for a long time. I've been big on Derek Brunson for a long time. The fact that he runs in throwing crazy punches is a technique in itself, and people discredit that. And I don't think that that's fair at all, because whether it's the smartest style or not, it doesn't matter. It's whether it's effective. And Uriah Hall, who's a 10 times better striker than Derek Brunson, isn't ready to take 7 punch combinations. Whether your chin's in the air, it doesn't matter.
Well,
he's retreating,
and
he hits him with a left, and it's over.
Yeah, we just celebrated Andrade for doing the same. That's her style. I feel like that kind of pressure, just like going in. And that
she has a bit more head movement than he does, though, because his head is straight up.
I can't even remember other fights. That last fight, he looked like a black girl in high school, like that you accidentally stepped on the back of her foot.
And I think that's the technique. I think that's a style. It's pressure, ultra pressure, whatever you want to call it. But he's throwing so much at these fighters that even people with better footwork just aren't expecting. They're expecting to do their routine of, I'll take 2 steps out, I'll be on the outside again, jab, jab. Where he's like, oh, your 2 steps isn't enough. You need 10 steps because I'm going to keep throwing those crazy, crazy punches. But Anderson Silva, if there's anyone who can stop all of a sudden and put everything into a punch or kick, to finish you, has highlight reels of that, of people walking into his punches. Derek Brunson is perfect for that, but if anybody has given the current number one contender the hardest fight he's ever had, it's Derek Brunson versus Yoel Romero. Derek Brunson took him down 3 times in that fight, didn't let him get up. When Derek Brunson uses his wrestling,
manhandled him.
It looks awesome.
Manhandled him.
He ruptured his spleen in that fight versus Yoel Romero. Elbowed him to the body. He ruptured Derek Brunson's spleen. And that's how tough Derek Brunson is. Like, he finally tapped, but who knows when that really happened. Fun fight. This could go either way. This could be, I feel like, a round 1 finish for either fighter, unless Derek Brunson says, I'm not going to run in on a counterpuncher, and he decides to use that wrestling that he used against Yoel Romero when he lost. If he does that against Anderson Silva, it'll be a Chael Sonnen match where it's going to be 4 or 5 rounds of him on top, just grounding and pounding.
I think it's just a 3-round fight.
Oh, right. I was just saying in reference as of the fight. That's what it'll be. And that's the way Brunson will win this fight. He's at Jackson Winklejohn. Derek Brunson is, so he's fighting the best of the best up there. Team Nogueira, Black House for Anderson Silva. He's also fighting the best of the best. Watch Embedded. There's really good info on both of these guys.
They're rated 10-9 right now. That should not be. Derek Brunson, it sucks. He was actually on a run for the title and probably would have gotten a really quick shot. And I think Whitaker was a hometown guy that they put there. The UFC put in Australia for that card. And that's the only reason Whitaker saw Brunson.
Whitaker's a counterpuncher as well with power. And Whitaker was hurt multiple times in that fight. So it wasn't that it wasn't working. It just looked sloppy as hell.
Yeah, I just think my hopes here is that Brunson learns from his mistake from that fight and kind of maintains it a little bit. Everybody, he grew up watching the same reels and fights that you've seen of Anderson Silva, so the same respect that you would walk into the ring with, he has for him. So he's not going to just walk in on these crazy head kicks and all the other. Hopefully he's smarter than that.
We would hope.
I actually think that Anderson Silva got a third of Daniel Cormier in that fight. I think out of respect and for him taking the short notice fight, Daniel put it on him. But Daniel could have finished that fight if he really wanted to, in my opinion. And not that I don't think Daniel's a fight thrower or anything like that. I don't think Daniel's a dirty fighter. I just think
he has a bigger picture. He realized he could beat him without hurting him. Yeah, he was like, I'll just beat him by points. I'll do everything I have to win this fight to not lose my belt. Or the belt wasn't even up. But I'll do everything I have to for this and whatever. But I think that Anderson is just, he's past his prime. And I don't think he has the same. I think he has legs. I think he has that. His kicks. He always has a flash knockout ability.
Yeah. With his,
he beat Bisping. Yeah. One of his losses.
Yeah, but I'm not as impressed. But I know Bisping's holding the belt. But that's the thing. Other thing I was saying. To me, Bisping is a striker. You know, I think Brunson's better Bisping than Bisping is. So I feel like. I know Bisping's wearing the belt, but to me, he can talk all the shit about defending his belt and stuff. Like his last fight, who was this? He just fought Dan Henderson. Is that who he defended his belt against?
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm not. That's all I have to say about that. I
love Dan. Hurt a few times
Dan's an American.
Fight. He ate a couple of those rights.
Most fucking people out there don't think Bisping won that fight. So
it's the same with Bisping winning over Anderson Silva. He was knocked out at the end of that fight and came back and won 2 more rounds.
Bisping is, I think, I like Bisping. I like his personality, but I think he puts butts in the seat for a part of the world that the UFC craves, and I think some things are set up for some people to be able to. There's no way he can duck Yoel. That's an interesting fight. But anyways,
it's where Yoel has the best chance of ever being a champ in the UFC.
I think Brunson's gonna knock out Anderson Silva in round 1 or 2.
Wow. I think Brunson, and he is a slight favorite at minus 150. I like Brunson as well. I think for his sake, I hope he decisions him and takes him down and ground and pounds him for 3 rounds to Anderson Silva. I just think
DC.
Yeah, I just think that Anderson always has a shot of knocking anybody he's in the ring without, and hopefully Winklejohn has the game plan of Derek. You're going to shoot in on a single, and you're not going to let him up.
If Anderson Silva wasn't Anderson Silva, he would already be fighting in Bellator.
I would agree with that statement 100%. That's well put. Well put. So, co-main event aside, we have the main event in the newly formed 145-pound division with both of these contenders. Neither one of them is a current champ. Holly Holm versus Germaine Darandami. Holly Holm, out of her last 5, has lost her last 2. Darandami, he has won her last 2. Darandami's last loss out of her last 5 is to Amanda Nunes, TKO elbows, over 3 years ago in the UFC. And Holly Holm has just recently lost to Miesha Tate and then to Shevchenko. I know we've heard her name around here once or twice.
Hashtag Team Bullet all day.
All day. So Holly Holm definitely gained her fame from beating Ronda Rousey. She hadn't really finished 2 women in the UFC other than Ronda Rousey, and hasn't finished anybody since with the 2 losses. I think people have started to figure her out. Shevchenko being a perfect counter fighter with wonderful footwork and an understanding of the game. I think that Germaine, the Iron Lady, is kind of that style of Shevchenko, but not as well of an MMA all-around fighter. She's an expert in her specific facet of the fight, or a specific Dutch kickboxing style, which is go forward. It's Ramon Decker's style, where you go in and you throw a punch and you're going to eat a punch, but you're going to throw a harder punch. And we on Lesbo on the Bean at twitter.com, we retweeted this. The Iron Lady knocking out a man. She fought him at a boxing match, and she knocked him clean out.
He didn't want
anymore. He, on the ground, was like, I didn't know what I got into. The man wasn't a professional. I believe it was some actor that had been...
The man was wishing his father was dead. He was like, oh my gosh, I wish my dad was dead so he didn't just see
Definitely
me
go to Twitter.
Knocked out by...
Look at our GIF there. It's a really great video of just the Iron Lady doing what she does best. And she hits him with a right, but she eats a shot in that. And I think that's a perfect indicator of her style. Regardless of who she's fighting, she'll give a shot to take a shot. And against Holly Holm, who's a precision striker, it doesn't take that many. Ask Ronda. It doesn't take that many. They accumulate fast when you just keep eating shots. Darandami does have really good footwork, and she has power. She loads up on her right. She has a really straight right. I think the better overall fighter is Holly Holm. And I think that Holly Holm, as a decision, she's went 5 rounds multiple times in her career already. She's made it late into those 5 rounds. And the experience of being in the UFC, she's going to be a champ. The UFC wants her to be a champ because they already have invested so much in her. They gave her a fight that she can win.
Fans invested in her.
Exactly.
People like her. The
Iron Lady doesn't have as big of a following. I think that she is a black horse in the division. I just think that potentially...
she's a black horse. She's the only other fighter in the division.
She's the one to watch out for. She's the one to watch out for. And why is she the one to watch out for? Because, Christiana Cyborg stayed away from the UFC, turned down a fight from either one lady. They both said yes, and she said, wait, 2 more weeks. We ourselves on this podcast said, why is she turning down fights? Because she's probably juicing. She came out and was caught juicing. This is all...
Or not caught juicing, but using diuretics, which the type of diuretics she was using are for a lot of the times women who are taking steroids or testosterone of some sort and are trying to mask it in their system.
So the biggest benefit to masking agent.
Yeah, it brings your estrogen levels up or something. So it's like...
Right. And it wasn't only us. There was people like Joe Rogan saying like, oh, she just turned down a fight because she has to recuperate from the weight cut, but she's deadlifting 300 pounds. Like, something doesn't add up. We could see it a mile away. We're not rocket scientists here at Lesbo and the Bean.
We are time travelers.
That we are.
And we can't give you all the answers of the fights because that'll be your first question. Why don't you have better picks? Well, if we gave you all the answers, then the government would be at our door.
I pay my taxes. That's all I need.
If that really is you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, again, moving back to the fight, that for this newly formed division, Holly Holm is likely... it's a near even fight. Actually, the Iron Lady was the favorite here, and I actually was betting... I was putting all my eggs in one basket and saying Iron Lady all day because I assumed that she was going to be the underdog because it makes so much more sense in the whole grand scheme of things that she beat Emma Rose, who was a debuting fighter that she retired. That's who she fought to get to this, and she beat prior to that Pachenko, who is no longer in the UFC as well. This is the Iron Lady compared to Holly Holmes, who's losing to top 5 women, top 3 women, Shevchenko and Miesha Tate. So the takedowns are going to be a key. The grappling's going to be a key. I think Holly can also beat her standing. Darren Dami has a puncher's chance.
Takedown defense. Holly has great takedown defense.
Darren Dami doesn't shoot at all, though. There's no
neither
takedown.
of them are going to shoot, I don't think.
I think Holly could. I think I could see Holly doing it if she takes that next
step. She's
step.
at the right camp.
Exactly.
This is with Holly. When I hear people say, I feel like this phrase fits her maybe better than anyone else in the UFC right now. When people say the phrase, they have all the set, they just don't pull the trigger, that's Holly Holm.
Yeah.
And I do think we saw Holly beat a Ronda that had never been punched and had her nose broken before, and Holly was the first one. She got to break that virgin nose, and it sent her in a spiral. Second Ronda fight, Ronda has post-traumatic stress disorder immediately when that nose is broken again, which happens with a broken nose. And I think Holly with Shevchenko, Holly doesn't lack Shevchenko's that good. Like, we just saw Shevchenko against Pena, where we know like Pena is one of the better grapplers in the women's division. Shevchenko waited her out, timed every one of those takedowns, took her down more than Pena took Shevchenko down. Yeah. So I just think that Shevchenko's so good. Jermaine, I like her. She seems like a really nice person. I just don't think she's the caliber of fighter Holly Holmes is yet, and Holly has something to prove. She wants fighting as much as every other woman
out of her last 5, her last 2 losses are her only 2 losses in a title bout, and then who people are saying is the number 1 contender, Shevchenko, is who Holly lost to. I mean, Darren Dami has only lost to, in the UFC, she's only lost to Amanda Nunes, but
then the other fights they gave her are like
Elmo's.
She was a super cute girl, but she looked like a little mom. Wasn't that fight on the same the Australian card or whatever?
I believe so.
One?
Yeah. She was a local, and she got eaten alive.
She took a knee that it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. You could hear it.
She took such a knee. She was done. Yeah. She took a knee and fell over like she got hit in the nuts. Yeah. She just down. So I feel like, no offense to Jermaine, that takes skills to land, especially on another skilled person. But you ain't landing that knee on Holly.
I would agree with that.
So
100%.
And my other hopes is that Miesha Tate submission with Holly, it's because, and she said it in interviews afterwards, but everybody that was watching the fight, she had the fight won. She had won all the rounds before and started losing the third a little bit because Miesha's cardio started to show. But she was just going to coast. She was going to coast it out for the points and pull the John. We see a lot of everyone out of John Wink's gym. They just play the point game, I feel like, hopefully, she comes out and she is a little hungrier for that belt. She's not going to leave it in the judges' hands. Hopefully we get to see her not be afraid to pull the trigger. If she isn't afraid to pull the trigger, she's going to finish.
So Jermaine. You think striking-wise she's going to get the better of?
I think striking.
That's where I think that she actually has the biggest disadvantage. Not that she's the worst striker than Darren Dami, but Darren Dami, his style is ultra power. Ultra power, so it takes one shot.
She's a close fighter. Holly fights at distance.
I think that the angles that Jermaine can throw, she's set up for power. I think that Holly's ground game, if she can get her down and hold her down, will win this so easily for her. She could even submit her.
Jermaine's cardio.
I don't think it's that good because it's that same.
And she's never gone a 5-round fight.
That's what I think. So, again, if the Iron Lady would have been an underdog, I would have been all over this. But now that Holly is, and really, when you really look at it, Holly should be a favorite here, like a minus 150 favorite. The fact that she's an underdog at all, been putting money on her already because there's so many more avenues. The only avenue Jermaine has to win this fight is hard punch or kick in a kickboxing MMA fight where Holly Holmes can do the kickboxing and take her down.
Is if Holly doesn't win this fight, we're going to see, because she's right in that same age bracket. She's a little older, actually, than Misha and Ronda. She's going to fucking retire. And I don't want to see Holly Holm retire yet, because I have to see her fight Cyborg. If anything, if this division's only set up as a gift to me, her Holly Holm stylistically against Cyborg is so interesting to me. The other thing that Holly doesn't get enough credit for, she is a hard bitch to knock out.
Yeah.
She is a hard bitch. I'm not even worried about, I think if she fought Amanda Nunes, that fight's so interesting. Yeah. I think I know flukes come and go in fighting, and they happen throughout a career. I really just believe we just saw Holly's two flukes backed up against each other.
She's never lost and as a pro in MMA before the UFC, because she had a couple fights outside of it.
I just think Jermaine's a feed for her. I think their rankings in bantamweight should say enough, but this would be crazy. This is where my naivete in weight cutting. If 145, because Holly says she has no problem making 135. Mm-hmm. Jermaine wants to move up to 145.
Yes, she's tall.
So when you say that Holly doesn't have any problems making 135, and I know Joe's been trying to sell that in the breakdown, when his voiceover. But it just makes me like, oh, is Holly really a 145-pound fighter? We always see her; she looks fucking cut as anything. But is Jermaine, if she really is a 145-pound fighter, then she's walking around 20 pounds heavier than Holly.
165 probably.
Yeah, so it's just. I'm going to go Holly, and I think she's going to TKO round 4, and it's going to be a combination of her power and her strikes, but I think it's going to mix with the exhaustion of Jermaine.
Just to get it all out there, Darren Tommy is 5'10", Holly Holm is 5'8", which I don't think Holly Holm's 5'8". I think Holly Holmes is taller than that, but that's what it says on Tapology, and Darren Tommy is going to have a 2.5 reach advantage. So she's going to have a slight reach advantage, but that's not super unfamiliar for somebody with the type of experience Holly Holm has had in boxing and MMA. The thing that is a bit notable is that the Iron Lady has been at AKA. She's with Cormier, with Gutierrez, with a bunch of other guys. Like, they train hard at that gym and they're good on the ground. Rockhold, all these guys. It's the caliber of gym that Winklejohn is at. It's going to be a fun fight. It's a rough pay-per-view main event.
And stop giving it shit, everyone. Yes, Cyborg's not there, but Cyborg's not fighting these women to her own volition.
It's her own fault.
And everyone can keep saying, well, Holly turned down the fight at 145. She said she'd only take it at 130. Yeah, I understand that. But Holly, if Cyborg was ready to fight for Brooklyn card, and Holly would not take the fight, Holly would not be fighting for this title. It would be Chris over Holly for this title. Mm-hmm. Dana asked Chris first. She turned it down twice. Holly has to step in and replace it. Hollywood didn't even want to move to 145 yet. It was kind of suggested to her by the company. So I feel like it's just, you got to stop giving them shit. At least they're fighting for this title. They haven't been handed this title like a lot of other athletes in the sport were handed their first title when they walked in the UFC. At least they're fighting for theirs. Right. They're not walking on a stage and getting it in front of a crowd, in front of a whole bunch of people cheering, and like, here's the 145 division, our new champion, Holly.
So, the really interesting thing, where we can just move on from our breakdown. Thank you for listening to our breakdown here at Let's Go in the Vein on Twitter. I had a home decision. I'd said it a little while ago. But with this, I think it ties in perfectly with... So, moving on from the breakdown, what do you think is going to happen with this 145 division? Because so far, there's only 2 people in the 145 division. Everyone else is a 135er saying they'll move up too.
Here's what I think. Oh, go ahead.
Invicta... has a 145 division that's also lacking in talent. It's hard to find. That Invicta champ's about to come over for 145, or she's talking about taking on this champ already. And WSOF, I believe, just opened a 145 division, and they're looking for 145, and they can't find many women. What do you think's really going to happen? Now you have 3 promotions that 2 will pay more for those 145 women, where UFC won't, but these women either want to get paid or they want to fight in the UFC. Usually they want to fight in the UFC because you want to be the best of the best, and it's the number 1 promotion, but you're going to make them out the least amount. What do you think happens?
Next, I think Chris, she's going to get a year suspension because...
At least.
I just guess. She's
multiple
gonna get
offender.
At least a year.
Yeah, multiple offender.
So she's going to get at least a year. Maybe they'll go easier on her because she's an American citizen. Nah, just kidding. I think that she will be back. She'll fight for this title. And right now, the way I'm looking at it, especially with JJ talking about a 125, and there's been some 135ers that said they'll go down to 125, I even think if you ever have a shot at seeing a Ronda Rousey in the ring again, it's at 125. I think that's the only way she can go is down.
As muscular as she looked, I don't think she'd get there unless she lost that muscle.
Her legs and her calves and hips and ass, she just has that feminine build still, where she doesn't have those lean. She's not lean below the waist yet. She was lean from the waist up, and her arms look good, and her rear end and legs looked amazing. But I just feel like she has a little bit. She could lose 10 pounds out of there. She could get down, or it'd be 9 pounds. She could weigh in at 126. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I just think JJ going up to 125, it would be so interesting to me. Even Misha said she wouldn't do it, but the idea of Misha at 125 fighting JJ at 125 is such an interesting fight to me.
So I feel like what you're saying more is that F the 145 division. We need to start a 125 division.
No, I think the 125 is going to come eventually, but what I see happening with the 145 right now is going to be where 135ers go to die. So they're going to get this. This will be the thing. The Jessica eyes of the world. Do you want to go over down to Invicta, or do you want to go to the 145
and have a title shot in 2 fights
and fight Chris?
Yeah.
So you'll be looking at your inevitable doom, but you'll get 2 more things on TV in a Reebok uniform. Like, that's really
valid points. I think that you have made a good quote, and we're gonna have to keep going with it. 145 women's division is where UFC fighters go to die.
Where the 135
fighters go to die. Yeah. I think that's a wonderful line, and we're gonna stay with that. So I like this 125 talk. I also think that if UFC was trying to play it right, other than creating the division for Cyborg, they would open the division at 125 because there's multiple women.
I'm curious about Pena at 125. I never liked her at 135, but her build and the way she's structured and stuff, and that long, if she could get 10 pounds off her physique.
Yeah, it's a big gap at a small weight.
I just know myself and how low I've been and how heavy I've been, and I know how low I can get. Even in my most muscular form. Do I look great? No. But did Connor look great at 145? He looked like the machinist. Yeah. So I feel like it's kind of, do you look at your best when you're at your lowest weight? Probably no one does. Right. When they're at their weight that they fight at. It's probably like you're emaciated self.
Dehydrated, yeah.
So the way I've seen some dudes look on stage, Chris Cyborg's the only woman I've seen look that way on stage. Where she looks so lack of water. Misha, even the time she passed out, Misha's body was still her body still looked like she could have lost it in fat and not had to have lost it in water.
There's been a couple, I feel like...
But look, that's not happening to... Rhonda must have had a hard weight cut before the Holly thing. She didn't come in even dealing with weight. She was way on weight before. Yep. Misha we saw her had that hard cut. The next fight, she was already on weight a week before. So I feel like ladies, different than the men, they have to change their lifestyle to walk around at the smaller weight to go in. I mean, men probably can too. I just know they can. I mean, you've heard stories of a guy lost 30 pounds in a week.
Oh, yeah.
I never heard that about a lady. I'm sure it happens, but it seems like men's bodies handle it maybe a little better than a woman's body. I don't know, doctors, call in, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we have a much longer tradition of doing it, so therefore we have the stats and we know how to do it a little bit better. And I think that what I don't like is when, unless you're, I mean, how do you become a professional weight cutter, though? How do you become someone who's like, I'm going to help you cut weight? Other than you just learned this, I learned a lot of these weight cutting systems through wrestling and stuff, and just some of it's online, some of it's just old timers say, know what you do? You do this. You drink some vinegar after a meal, you throw it up, and then you don't have all that food in your belly. You run with plastic bags on. You wake up extra early. Like, you go sit in a sauna with plastic bags. You get all these things, and shit, I forgot where I was going with this completely.
Weight cutting.
So with the weight cutting, how do you become a professional?
We are on medicinal marijuana.
That is right. For all sorts of ailments, we think it benefits you all over.
We don't even have to get into that. HIPAA.
Exactly.
We don't even have to get into that. We got HIPAA rules.
But it benefits you all the way around in your life, and...
Anyways.
I don't do drugs, I just smoke weed.
Yeah.
So, with the professional weight cutting in the sport, it's... How do men say... Hey lady, I'm going to show you how to weight cut. when I don't know how a lady the weight comes off
Yeah.
a lady. I can tell you how it comes off of most guys. Depends on how they lose
Yeah.
their weight. But how any man comes into a lady and says, I'm going to work around your cycle. I'm going to work around this. I'm going to work around this. We'll get it. Just like a guy will strain you out. It doesn't make sense because they hold it differently.
That's such a good point that I feel like maybe isn't talked about enough in this sport in general with weight cutting is women's cycles.
It's different.
How much more weight you retain 1 week in the month compared to another.
Does it mess up your cycle to cut weight? I'm sure. I know women that wrestled that it would. They'd be like, I haven't had a period because I don't have any water in my body.
Anytime I lost weight like drastically or anytime like that, I just skip my period. Every time. I always know I'm losing weight if I'm skipping my period. So I feel like for ladies, but even migraines, dehydration, cramps, like just the amount of shit that goes on with it too. So you're already having all these ailments and then you're trying to cut weight. You could then get nausea because of the other ailments like that are created. And then you throw up when you're already trying to cut weight. You could put yourself in a really bad situation. You know, it's like where you're like, oh, we don't want you to throw up. Like that's not what we're trying to do. You need to keep that fluid in.
Right. And
yeah, that's a good point. And no one ever talks about it. It's kind of $1 million idea for ladies.
Somehow certify someone to be a lady weight cutter.
It'd be called cycle. Cycle weight cuts. And until, I don't even like the argument of the weight cutting because it's neither here nor there. Weight cutting's going to happen. Until they figure out a way to regulate it, it's going to happen. So, now that we all know it's going to happen, let's talk about it in a realistic form. Every time anyone talks about weight cutting, they're like, oh, I don't even agree with it. Everything's so dangerous. Well, it happens. It happens in a lot of sports. It happens in ballet, it happens in horse racing, and it happens in UFC. So it's just a truth of the trade.
How would you best say that you would change that? I would personally say that you would do the weigh-ins same day. An hour before the fight, they weigh in. Because guess what deters you? You don't want to kill yourself because what these guys, they can kill themselves or they can lose stamina, health, even, or they dehydrate themselves the night before because they understand they have 22 hours, 23 hours to hydrate, get as much nutrients, process some of that food. Maybe poop, probably not. IVs are outlawed now, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. But, well, I could see a masking agent, but still, if with these weight rules, people can get in danger, but it deters them from going lower in weights. But if you made it all the same day, within the hour, these guys know they can't recover in that time, so they're not going to make those drastic weight cuts. They're going to move up from 155 to 170. We've been saying it from the get.
It's so much smarter your way than Joe Rogan's way. Joe Rogan wants to send like an ASADA type company around to everyone and test them on their actual
hydration.
weight.
They do
their
that in
actual
wrestling,
weight
and I don't
for
like
like
that.
6 months so that they get their actual weight and
too
they have
much.
to stay at it for this amount of time, and then once they get their actual weight, that'll be their fighting weight, and then they come every couple of weeks to test them at that weight, and it could be random.
That's too
yeah,
much.
and then all of a sudden now you're have $1 million company you have to employ to do that, and all the people and man hours when it's just so easy to put a scale at the ringside.
Yeah, a certified,
not even a
legitimate
big deal.
scale.
They walk down.
Literally 1 hour. You could be weighing in maybe an hour and a half, but while one
maybe
fight's
2,
going
so
on,
you could have your 1 hour, and then if you missed weight, you'd have the extra hour to.
But
try
I
to
think
make
that
it.
giving them too much time is where people get in trouble because they say, then I got 5 hours to get as much water as I can in me, and that's not enough time. We know that.
Yeah.
So that's where I think.
And you know it would show instantly in the ring.
Exactly.
Knockouts we'd see, weakness of muscles we'd see, cramps we'd see. They wouldn't be able to do it.
The guys that would be 155, if you were to go down from 185 pounds to 155 or 170 and then put on 20 pounds of water in an hour, that's going to stay in your belly, where the guy that's naturally 155 is going to run laps around you in that ring. Because there's just no way around it. Like, you're just going to have to be more fighting at your own natural weight. I think we're onto something here. We need to start our own organization.
We need to start our own podcast.
Oh!
We need to start our own podcast so people will hear about it. I don't know.
So, fans, I actually, do you think that this is a good idea or not? Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if you have a better way of doing it.
Lesbo and the Bean. You can find us on iTunes, Lesbo and the Bean. If you guys have any fan questions, feel free to shoot them at us. Anything you want us to cover or hear our opinions on, we'll do that too. Yeah.
So, another week with Lesbo in the bean.
Yeah, we might be back again this week. It depends what happens. If there's anything worth talking about, maybe tomorrow. Highly doubt anything big will be worth talking about in UFC tomorrow. We'll see.
Every day's a new day.